Okay, so it's Friday and it's time to make some Kaiser Rolls today. But first we're going to be doing our sourdough starter. So I've measured out 50 grams of water, 50 grams of flour. That's roughly about 1.5 ounces of water, 1.5 ounces of flour. And I've got my old sourdough starter here. So I'm going to take about a spoonful. You can see how it's starting to get bubbly after 4 days of growth, 3 days of feeding. I'm just going to take about a spoonful of this and put it in with my new one. This I will dump in the trash and wash out. We're going to mix this up. And I do mix it thoroughly. I want to make sure all the flour is mixed in there. And being that we've been feeding this throughout the week, this should grow pretty nicely by tomorrow. Now this is including Monday, it's day 5. So with day 5, we should be starting to see some growth. If you're not seeing growth, we're just going to keep feeding it until we do. We will see some growth eventually. Okay, so let me put a lid on this. We'll put this aside. This needs to grow overnight. Onward to Kaiser Rolls. In the Kaiser Roll recipe, it calls for pat fermente. I've got some old dough here that I made, and you're going to need some pat fermente for this. It calls for 8 ounces of it. I've got the salt, the honey, and the yeast in here as well, 10 ounces of flour. It calls for an egg and some oil, so I put those in the container, and I'm going to go ahead and just dump those in. It calls for 6 ounces of water, so I'm going to go ahead and dump that in. And we're just going to start bringing this together. I'm going to start off with this spoon here. I'm just going to get everything broken up and everything kind of together. Bring it together as a dough. As soon as this starts really coming together, I've got pretty much all the dry stuff collected together. I am going to bring this and turn this out onto the board and start to knead it by hand. Okay, so we've got pretty much everything together here, and everything is kind of gathered together. Let's turn this out onto the board. It's a little stickier dough than previous doughs. As you can see, it's kind of messy. Keep your bench scraper nearby, you may need it. I can feel this dough is kind of lumpy at this point. So it's going to take a little while. Probably going to take a good 10-12 minutes of mixing to get this to come together. I'm going to get enough gluten development so that it's not sticky anymore, at least not sticking to the board anymore. And like I said, keep your bench scraper nearby. If the dough starts to get really sticky on you, don't fall into the temptation of adding more flour. That's not the idea here. If we add more flour, we're adding more flour to the recipe, and there you're not going to have the kind of rolls that you had hoped for. So you'll see I'm just sort of folding it on over and I'm bringing it on together. You can use the old slap and fold technique. Reach from the side, slap it down, fold it over. Wet doughs work really well for slap and fold. Okay, so after considerable time, taking about 12 minutes or so. But what I'm getting here is I'm able to do a window pane test on this dough. And that's the key there. We wanted to get good enough gluten development so we could show a decent window pane. I can do that. I just wet my fingers a little bit and get a pretty good window pane going. This dough is still a little bit underdeveloped, but it takes a lot of kneading to get there. So, and this dough is a little on the sticky side. We're gonna go ahead and put this in a bowl, and we're gonna let it ferment. It says about 2 hours. 2 hours or until doubled in volume. So I like to go with that. I like to go or until doubled in volume. It might take 2 hours, but it very well might not. It might take an hour to double. But I want to see something that's about twice the size of what it is here. So it's not going to come up twice as high. It's kind of spread out too. But the idea here is that you're going to kind of visually see that it's about double in volume. We'll be back and we'll go into shaping these. Okay, so fermentation is done. It's about doubled in volume, and I think what I'm going to do now with this Kaiser roll dough is I am going to turn it out onto the board, and we're going to scale it out into individual rolls. So let's get the scale ready. We're going to probably do these in 4 ounce. Well, if you want them to be big enough for a sandwich, wet my fingers. Keep a little water nearby. Wet your fingers because touching this stuff, it's pretty sticky. And I think just to make sure, I'm going to put a little bit of flour around here so that we can more easily handle this dough. So maybe 5 ounce will be good. Yeah, I think 5 ounce would be good. That'll be a good enough size for a sandwich. There we go, 5 ounce. And that one's a little over 4. That's okay. We'll put a little more flour down just to make sure we've got enough here so that we're not going to end up with sticking issues, because this dough is more sticky. It's more moist. All right, so let's shape these things. Traditionally, there's a couple ways of shaping Kaiser rolls. What we can do is we can either shape them with a press, which is what a lot of companies do these days. They're using a press. Instead, I'm going to just do the traditional knotted version. So we're going to take this and kind of fold it over and pinch it, make a log with this. And we're going to roll this out. And remember, if there's any issue with sticking, put a little flour on your hands. Put a little flour on the strand if you need to. And pre-shape these. That's about 1 foot long. The traditional way to deal with these rolls is to knot them. Presses started coming out during the early 20th century, and the press basically creates an illusion that it's knotted. So it gives you a look being knotted, but it's not. It's faster, it's certainly easier, but it's not really knotted. And if you really want to create a traditional Kaiser roll, you want to knot these rolls. So again, rolling them over, giving them a good pinch until they form a little log. Then we're going to roll them out into sort of a pre-shape strand of about 1 foot long. here. Here's my little one. Now, there's a lot of things you can put on Kaiser rolls for a garnish. Before they go in the oven, they're going to be proofed, and they can be garnished with poppy seeds, if you happen to have poppy seeds around. I personally really like kosher salt on these. Some people like to put fresh cracked peppercorns on these. Some people like to, in New York State, you get up around Buffalo, New York, and you'll find they use a mixture of kosher salt and caraway seeds. They really enjoy that, and they call that a Kimmelwick roll instead of a Kaiser roll. All right, so this is almost long enough. We're going to go ahead and we're going to lengthen this a little bit. What we're going to do is we're going to tie it in a knot, just like that, just a basic straight knot. We have one tail that's very long, and the way we're going to deal with that is we're going to go around again, and because we still have some more space left, we're going to go around again. And there's your Kaiser roll. So we've gone a straight knot, we've gone around 2 more times. I'm going to stick that on a sheet pan. We're going to be covering these up to let them proof. So let's do another one of those. I'm going about as long as my cutting board here, which I think is about 20 inches or so. But it's good to have extra room. And you don't want to tie these too tight. You want to tie them kind of loose. So there's our straight overhand knot. If they start getting sticky, put a little bit of flour on them. It's okay because they're going to proof. So this around again, and we're going to go around the 3rd time. And we bring up what I call the nose that sticks up here in the middle. Well, if you turn it over, it should look the same. Little nose sticking out at the end. And when you put them on a pan, just give them some space because they're going to grow. Okay, so again, leaving one side really long, one side really short, and leaving it kind of nice and loose. Remember, if it is overly loose, it's okay because it's going to proof and it's going to puff up and it's going to expand and fill all those little holes. Okay, so I've got one overhand knot. Let's go around again. And let's go around again. Again, it's not very tight, right? It's just kind of loose. If that bottom nose pulls out, like mine just did, just push it back down in there so that it looks the same on both sides. Okay, dance this around a little bit of flour. It's okay that it's got a little flour on it. There's a nice loose knot. Just kind of loosen it up a little bit more. So it's got a nice big opening in the middle for me to tie around. And we're going to tie it around a 2nd time. And we'll tie it around a 3rd time. As you can see, as the dough shrinks a little, it fills those holes right in. We've got that nose fill out from the bottom, so we're going to push that back down in there. Once it starts to proof, that will all stay together. Last one. Okay, big knot. Round again. And we'll come around a 3rd time. There we go, very nice. Stick those on a sheet pan. And here they are. I'm going to give them plenty of space to grow. Now on the recipe it says to turn these upside down to proof. And usually you put the poppy seeds down on the sheet pan. You lay these on top of the poppy seeds. That's a kind of a tried and true method. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to skip that step, and instead what I'm going to do is I'm going to be letting these proof under plastic, and then I'm going to go ahead and put a little bit of moisture on here to wet these slightly, and we're going to go ahead and put salt on them right before they go in the oven. So just to make sure nothing sticks, so the plastic doesn't stick, I'm going to put a little flour on top. Put some plastic wrap. And really, plastic is one option. Of course, you could put a big Tupperware container over top of these, like a big Rubbermaid container. That would protect them too. And even for that matter, a little dish towel, a clean dish towel would work just fine. All right, these need to proof for a while. They're going to proof until they get considerably larger. I want to see them get really a good 50 to 75% larger and nice and chubby. And then we'll be ready to go. We'll be ready to go to the oven. Okay, so they've proofed, man. We've proofed for about 2 hours to get this size, and they're really nice and puffy. I'm going to spray them. A little bit of water, just to moisten them a little bit, and to make sure the salt will stick. I'm going to use some kosher salt, and we will be back in a second. In a flash on video, but it's going to take about 20 minutes to bake these. So I'm going to stick them in the oven, and we're going to see how they come out. All right, here's the Kaiser Rolls as they came out of the oven. They are still really hot. They just came out, but at 400 degrees. Put these in, and they came out just fine. I did put a little bit of steam in this oven, so I had a pan. I just took like a pan and I threw a few ice cubes in it as I threw in these into the oven, and what that did was it provided some steam for about the first 5 to 10 minutes of baking. This all together took about 20 minutes to bake, but the color is great. We're getting good color on the bottom. These are going to make great sandwich rolls. You just slice them in half, slap on whatever you like, pulled pork, cheese, whatever you like on there, and these are just great. Now, of course, as you can see, when you tie them, you get this nice distinct pattern, and that's one of the reasons I like the traditional tying of these into a knot. The stamp that is used, the hand tool that is a stamp, works really well, but it's fast. But the thing is that it doesn't quite give you this distinct shape when they're properly tied in a knot. So, looking forward to seeing your Kaiser rolls. Go ahead and make some at your place, and go ahead and post a picture of them up on the Talent System so we can all take a look at them. And we'll see you on Monday. We're going to be doing sunflower rolls on Monday, and sunflower rolls, very popular, super popular bread. Everybody loves it, and it'll be our introduction into multi-grain, whole grain baking. So see you Monday.